Ukrainian fascists have come to our land. It's a threat to Russians.
I'd like to address Vladimir Putin directly. I'm Russian too, just like you. Crimea is a small republic and Russia is a huge country. Defend us.
Stop hiding behind fancy words. The law came to an end when the first Molotov cocktail was thrown at our guys, who stood there defending the law and order we believed in. There are no more laws in Ukraine now.
Crimea has never surrendered to anyone, and it never will.
Here we can see wounded officers from the Crimean branch of the Berkut Riot Police, who spent 80 days in Kiev on Maidan, trying to maintain public order. Well, you know what that public order was like. There were people with gunshot wounds, for example. This is our friend. He was shot in both legs. There are other officers who also have gunshot wounds to their limbs. Some of them have got concussion injuries. I'm the father of one of those guys. My son is there, he's one of them. I think it was an outrage. Shooting at unarmed police officers is vile. But even more outrageous was the order they were given to carry out their duties without their service guns.
The right sector was mounting an attack. They started throwing stones at us. There was a hail of stones and firebombs. People had gone there with axes. We tried to hold them back while they tried to provoke us. Twice we fell back. They came forward and started throwing stones. There are a lot of injured among us. Many people suffered injuries to their limbs.
We stood there with nothing but shields and batons, all my officers and I, like cannon fodder. They were shooting at us as though we were targets at a firing range. Oh, we want to shoot that guy. Let's shoot this one. How about that one? Later I saw one of the officers. The bullet went into his arm and came out of his shoulder. I have bullet wounds right through both my legs. Here are my protectors. A bullet went through one of them. I was lucky. They aimed for the knee, but my protector had slipped down. And after that, they're still saying these people are peaceful demonstrators. So that means peaceful people just put a bullet through my leg. Why? And so many people were burnt. They caught fire in less than no time.
They showered us with missiles. We didn't even realize we were being shot at until the first officer fell. The second officer went down after him. I was the third, although I wasn't even standing in the first row. The bullets pierced the officers' shields, and my fingers are blown off by the pellets. The nasty thing is that now they're waging an information war against us. They insist we had guns, but how would so many of us get injured and killed if we were all armed too? A priest was talking in Mariinsky Park, cursing us. He was inciting people against us as if we were all demons. Everything was against us, he said, and God is with them. What is this, some kind of crusade? Feel free to kill, you'll be forgiven anyway.
Who can guarantee our children's safety? I will call the parents of each Berkut unit fighter personally and tell them to stand up for their children. If anyone touches my son or his friends, I would bloody die, tearing them to pieces.
We, the people of Crimea, will rule here, and we won't allow thugs to seize power. Power to Crimeans. Let's chant. Power to Crimeans. Power to Crimeans.
At one point, we realized that the existing government had no control over what was happening in Kiev anymore. We saw that armed militants in flak jackets with firearms, with their faces behind masks, were taking over. At that moment, we realized it was us who had to protect peace and order in Crimea. That's why the political party Russian Unity called for full mobilization to create volunteer groups for the purpose of self-defense. We'd planned to form just one battalion today, but many more people than we'd expected turned up. For a long time, Euromaidan was voicing the idea that the southeast of the country was passive. The Crimeans were passive as well. They thought that they could just come here and take over the place and no one would stand up to them. But our self-organization is a vivid illustration of just how active the Crimeans actually are. It proves that they really are ready to fight for their rights and legitimate interests.
Now is a truly momentous time in the history of Crimea. I'm asking everyone, I'm begging you all, please, call all your friends, relatives, neighbors, men and women. They should be here with us now, side by side. Now, all together. Hooray for Crimea! Hooray!
People like Stepan Bandera or Roman Shukhevych will never be thought of as heroes by Crimeans. Our true heroes will always be our grandfathers, who set our country free from fascists in 1945. But now Stepan Bandera's portrait hangs inside the Kiev administration building. We'll never acknowledge the rule of people who treat him as a hero.
Among the supporters of these Euromaidaners, as we call them here in Crimea, are the people who see Stepan Bandera as a role model. At the very beginning of the Second World War, he joined certain collaborator and nationalist groups in Ukraine. Later, those groups formed two whole battalions of the volunteer SS division, Galiciana. Those battalions were called Roland and Nachtigall. From the very beginning of the war, June 1941, they became notorious for their ethnic cleansing of the Jews, Russians and Poles in Lvov. It seems the new followers of Stepan Bandera and Roman Shukhevych and their Nazi ideas have come out on the streets of Kiev shouting, "We're for Europe." While in Europe there's not a single neo-Nazi member of parliament. There are about 50 of them at the moment in the Ukrainian parliament.
There's no Ukrainian power in Sevastopol today. Everyone must understand that. This government is not legitimate, and all who live in the town should now make that clear.
They come here from Kiev and say, he will rule here and everything will be done according to his will. Well, I don't want to live like that. I want our people to decide, but instead they just come here and give orders.
I'm saving my town of Sevastopol from the Banderov scum. I want them to stay away from here.
Power in the country has been seized by force. Are we slaves? That's why we have to show that Sevastopol says, this land is ours. We have nowhere to run. And our country is Russia. And we want to say, Mother Russia, look at your children. I'm saying Sevastopol has never surrendered. No one will force us to kneel. So I'm asking you to support the candidacy of Alexei Chali for the position of town mayor. He's Russian. Thank God we're Russians.
Look at the peaceful demonstration in Sevastopol. No one has bats. We don't cover our faces with masks. But for some reason, the peaceful demonstrators of Western Ukraine all wear masks. You can't see the faces of these people. You don't know who says what. My face is open, so are all the faces of men and women all around me. All these people who are here now and who come here every day wear no masks. That proves we're telling the truth, speaking from our hearts. We're not just dogs who come to break other people's arms and legs and take over buildings. We're not taking over anything. Look at what the Western Ukrainians did in the Volyn region, which, by the way, is one of their own Western regions. We're not even talking now about the southeastern parts and Sevastopol. They handcuffed their own governor and forced him to his knees. How can you reason with these people? What is there to talk about with people who call themselves true Ukrainians?
Filth, your time is over. Can you hear what I'm saying? Do you hear me?
What are you doing?
Get your hands off me, scum. I'm going to have to tell the media that the district prosecutor has gone away. He's gone for treatment. These bastards here, they really don't want to carry out their duties.
That's not true.
Shut up. I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you, okay? Sit down. I'm asking you, you bastard. Do you want me to lock you in the cell?
Let me explain.
Explain it to the people, you bastard. You'll explain to the people on Maidan. We'll drag you with a rope into the Maidan square.
I mean, what the hell is that? It's simply beyond my understanding. And we're saying we live in a tolerant country? People, look around you. This is a tolerant country, and these are reasonable people.
There is a peaceful demonstration of power. This is Sevastopol residents expressing their will. People who live in Sevastopol and the neighboring villages have come here of their own accord. There's no military men, there's no military equipment, only ordinary people. Who would be able to come here? Any extremists would. That's why we organized this checkpoint here.
We're here to prevent Sevastopol from turning into a second Kiev. That's all. We don't want any demonstrations or nationalists here. We don't want them. We need Sevastopol to be a quiet town. And look at what they've done in Kiev. Do you think the people in Kiev are happy? No.
We're not turning violent. If something looks suspicious, we check it out, ask questions. As long as we get answers, it means everything's okay.
Hello, what are you transporting?
Meat.
What?
Chicken meat.
I see. You have documents for the goods?
Yeah.
Okay, welcome to Sevastopol. Go on.
We have nothing to hide. Everyone knows our faces. Sevastopol is a small town. Why would we hide them? Besides, we're not doing anything illegal. It's a totally peaceful act that isn't against the law. We're just expressing our will. That's all.
This comes from the heart, you know. I've never even seen him in person. For me, this is the image of a hero.
The world's first cosmonaut. Everyone knows his name, but few people ever knew the man. Was Yuri Gagarin's iconic first space flight the product of good fortune or destiny?
He constantly failed to land properly. He couldn't see the ground.
They started throwing punches at him.
That was a turning point.
Gagarin, on our team.
This is your house. I'm your friend, your brother.
I will miss him. History will miss him.
He showed that he could unite the people.
We had a very trusting relationship. He is a chief, but a chief one of his kind, who communicates, who wants to know the truth. I could not imagine that the president could communicate like this. Before I became a president, and after, like a brother, like a father. I am sure that if at this moment I got struck by lightning, there are many leaders, revolutionary, Bolivarian, that can continue this process. Worldwide investigation of fishing industry reveals the hidden in troubled waters of fish farms.
Today you have a pandemic because PD and ISA is spread all over Norway. It's the most toxic food you have in the whole world.
Growing profit defeats officials' inquiry. Furthermore, health restrictions.
I'm sorry, I don't know about that such program, so I can't say anything about that now.
Who really knows what's inside the filet of fish? Filet of fish on RT.
What do you stand for?
We're for Ukrainian unity.
For peace and freedom in Ukraine.
But your flags aren't Ukrainian.
It's the Crimean Tatar flag.
Look, there's a Ukrainian flag.
Our hearts are with Ukraine.
There are two groups of people here. We have Crimean Tatars on one side and people from the Russian-speaking population on the other. Anyway, instead of there being a peaceful discussion, the situation rapidly became quite tense. There were some clashes.
Our Tatar brothers don't understand that the Ukrainian government has been deceiving both us and them for 20 years now.
I don't understand what the Bandera followers flag is doing here on our Crimean Peninsula. It's clear why there should be Russian and Tatar flags, but what on earth does Bandera have to do with Crimea? It's beyond comprehension. All of us see Stepan Bandera as a traitor, a fascist. Even more interesting, though, that the flag was raised right beside the Crimean Tatar flag. That can only mean that they support nationalism, they support Bandera.
Some 500,000 Bandera followers have taken over the whole of Ukraine.
What's Putin waiting for? All Russians will be purged from Crimea.
In any case, down with fascism.
Now we're all gathered together here to offer moral support for our guys, the soldiers of the Berkut riot police. By being here, we want to show them that they're not alone, not physically and not morally, that they have not been abandoned, and that we will never desert them in this cruel world where so many people are trying to make them look bad. We want to declare to the world, we won't surrender our Berkut guys. To all of us, the Berkut riot police officers are heroes.
Berkut! 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 Berkut!
You can see the reaction of the Crimean population. You can even see how Russian people react to a passing car just carrying a Berkut officer.
This is our son, our third one. He was always cheerful. He was always smiling. He's had dimples on his cheeks when he smiled. Ever since he was a very small child, he said to me, "Dad, there's a chance I could die." And I said, "What are you talking about, Vitaly?" And he answered, "We've broken up 4 barricades. We've surrounded Maidan Square, and now we're guarding it." I can't talk much longer. I have 30 officers, and 6 of them have already been sent to hospital. He was shot through the neck by a sniper. The bullet went right through the carotid artery, and it was impossible to save him.
A heart-shaped wreath. It reads, "To Vitaly, from a grieving fiancé."
Oh, Vitaly, my dear Vitaly.
Why are those strangers shooting good children?
He had a premonition. On the last day he called me and said, "Dad, terrible things are happening here. I don't have the words to explain it all to you properly. Everything has been destroyed. The cobbled road has been torn up, and they're throwing the cobblestones from the road right at us." And I asked him, "But how do you shelter from that?" "We just make a wall with our shields. We aren't able to do anything else." That was the last conversation we ever had at 7:40. And then by 9:10, he was gone.
Everybody has families and children. People haven't had their salaries or pensions for 2 months. That's tough. What's next?
We want a normal life. We want them to reach some kind of consensus, and if they can't do that, we're seriously asking to be part of Russia, because today it's not just about talking. Today there are real enemies knocking on our doors. We're asking, we're begging Russia not to forget about us. We're asking for help.
Мы просим помощи.
In the event of a critical situation developing, would Russia be able to give us a passport if we were to insist on getting Russian citizenship?
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you that at the moment, the process of obtaining Russian citizenship is the same as it was before. There have been no changes. If there are any changes, we will inform you in due course. Thank you.
Thank you to protect us.
Thank you.
They can come here for their holidays. They can come here from Western Ukraine, America, or Europe when they want a seaside break. But they will never be able to keep me quiet. They will never be able to make me speak in a language that I don't want to speak. I won't speak it on principle. They will never force me the way they forced our guys to their knees. They forced our Berkut officers and all the anti-Maidan activists and protesters to kneel and sing the Ukrainian national anthem.
I was one of those who returned like this from Kiev by bus. I'll get straight to the worst part of the story. I saw 2 buses that had been battered before they got to ours. We tried to persuade them to let us pass through because, well, we were traveling to a peaceful demonstration. But they just started pulling people out through the windows. Before that, they'd thrown gasoline-filled bottles at us. The doors were already open, and those animals were behind the bus and shouting to us, "Come out, we're going to kill you." They started to kick us out. Some guys began to jump off, and the first of them were beaten up really badly. It was awful. It was really scary. Then they made us hold our hands like this and move in the squat position while we shouted out their slogans. First, we were made to shout that we had disgraced the nation, and then glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. Then they forced us to pick up shards of glass from the windows that they'd broken while we had to sing the Ukrainian national anthem at the same time.
There were two women on our bus, me and another who was also called Tatiana. Everyone was making jokes about the two Tatianas. They dropped us off on the motorway and said, "Girls, get there on your own." We were really worried. I couldn't take it anymore. And finally called the bus manager, and he whispered to me, "Shush, we're just sitting here. Something terrible is going on. 7 people are already dead." We were just terrified.
Вот, пусть смотрят, кто едет, и лицо покажи свое. Вечером выложишь в Ютубе, пусть народ видит.
The road was blocked by a harvester. It was impossible to get through. We went out wanting to find a peaceful solution, but they didn't agree. They started throwing bottles, Molotov cocktails right into the bus there on the motorway. They were all carrying batons and beat up everybody who was getting off the bus, having first knocked them to the ground. They hit me in the ribs with a stick, and then they used reinforcing rods on my head. My face was completely covered in blood. I was just lying there with blood flowing. They said, "Don't lift up your head," and then they carried on kicking.
It was basically in the same forest belt area, but there were no bends in the road. They kicked everybody out of the buses. A bunch of people attacked us on a hill like this one. We were leaving, well, we were running away to be more precise, through the fields and then the forest. It was wet and the ground was very cold and damp.
It was very hard. I'm still stressed out by it.
I can't sleep for more than 3 hours, and then I wake up.
I wake up in a cold sweat at night.
I think that we were very lucky to have come back alive. It was pure luck.
My 4-year-old son recently asked me, "Mom, when will this war in Maidan, in Ukraine, in Kiev be over?" It brought tears to my eyes. I wrote down this phrase. I want peace in our country so that my children never have to ask me questions like that and never have to know why people die.